Today we want to look at the shape of grief, and it's very easy to define the shape of grief because in simple terms it means the shape of grief is just a shape of someone that you lost. So what does grief look like? When you tell someone to draw for you the shape of grief, and maybe they draw for you the picture of their late mother, they draw a picture of their late father, a picture of their late husband, wife, it's a spouse in that case, or a picture of the child or a friend, depending on the relationship, how deep it was. That the shape of grief in my life, it takes the shape of my mother. I think it's a shape that will never come out of me. I think it's something that will never run out of my mind. It will never be deleted by anyone. No one can erase the memories of my mother in my life. Having been brought up by that woman, a mother that I knew from the time I started mentioning the word mother, from the time I came to this world, 42 years plus a few months. For me, the shape of grief has taken the shape of my own mother, a woman that I knew for the last 42 years, a woman that carried me in her womb, brought me to this world, nurtured me, disciplined me. Where my mother was such a disciplinarian, where viboko tulikulishwa. Sijui nani anaweza kumbuka viboko. You know, sometimes we sit down and when we are making fun and good memories, bittersweet memories, we are also incorporating now the memories of how much we were tulionwa vita. Sijui kama nyinyi mlikuwa mnaonwa vita. But when I try to figure out of the role of a mother in our lives, she's the first teacher, the first disciplinarian, the first. Our mothers are firsts. They are the women of many firsts. So for me, processing grief has become so difficult. The grief of my mother and the loss of my mother has really affected me compared to any other loss I've ever experienced. That one is something that I know I will overcome with time, and I know I am moving 10 steps forward and then I'm moving like 30 steps backwards. I know in counseling it's allowed to grieve, it's allowed to get into acceptance, come back to denial, come back to bargaining, come back to acceptance, come back to thinking that maybe I am not doing well, or rather I am doing well. It's okay, it's allowed, and it is what we are as a people who have lost. It is what it is, for lack of a better word. It is what it is, because that's who we are, where we find ourselves, and we cannot run away from that situation. Actually, one thing I've come to realize is that you walk with your grief the way you walk with your shadow. Fortunately, the shadow will leave you when the sun goes. When there is no sun, there is no more light, the shadow will go. But one thing I've realized, actually, when the sun goes is when the grief becomes so deep, is when the pain, is when the way you sit down and think about your loved one and figure out about the good times, you're like, hey, my God, hey, kumbe, it is real, yeah? And personally, I have not had putting into account everything about my mother and looking at maybe her stuff. I was figuring out, like, the clothes in my house that belonged to my mother. I moved them to a different room, but I'm like, hey, is it still okay? Even I know where they're supposed to go. I know my brother gave direction who should be given those clothes, but who has the strength to go? And I start removing and I pack, and I am like, hey, my God, I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's okay for me right now. I don't think I can do that. Just because the shape of grief for me at this time is the shape of my mother. And I am like, and many times we see things happening. We've seen parents lose multiple children. We've seen children lose their parents, maybe to accidents, all of them. Recently we saw a whole family perish, including a house help. And the man survived. I don't know, I have not followed the story because I think at that time my mother was still very sick. In such a case, I am wondering, what does the shape of grief look like? I think the shape of grief to that man looks like the wife. It looks like the firstborn child, the secondborn child, the thirdborn child. It also still looks like the house help that they lost. So the shape of grief is very, very, I think it's very, very obvious that the shape of grief looks like the person you have lost. So for me, it is important that you cherish the moments, cherish the memories. For me, I am really, really banking on the memories, and we are discussing about it. Actually, me and my daughter and my dad, we discussed and we agreed that we are not going to discuss about other things, and we are like, hey, hatutaki kuongea juu ya mom, hatutaki kuongea juu ya shosh, hatutaki kuongea kwa sababu this thing is going to affect us. We said no, this is someone who has been part of our life. My father was telling me, this is a woman he knew for the last 43 years. Then for me, this is a mother I knew for the last 42 years. You can imagine. And looking into things and how things are, I think it's okay to continue talking about your loved one, because the shape of grief will always remain the person you have lost.